Let's take the issue of, since you've raised it, of medicines. I mean, a lot of the pharmaceutical companies have resisted and still are resistant on perfectly sensible grounds to them that they'll lose their competitiveness. Why should they make something cheaper or give it away or whatever it is, or even license the making of medicines at a cheaper price to countries that might rival them in time? And presumably this is what some of the richer countries are thinking in a competitive world. Aren't we just giving incentives, making it easier for our rivals? Is that bedeviling the technology section, or am I just being rather simplistic about it?
Those are good questions. I think 2 points I'd say in response. First of all, I think the pharmaceutical industry is one of the most profitable industries worldwide. So I don't think by making some more of their medicines available as generic drugs would actually cripple them financially. Sorry, what was the second part of your question?
Well, the second part is really isn't that a parallel now with other sorts of energy technology?
And your point was about that we were aiding competitors to the country. Well, I think again we need to put this in some perspective. I know some people think that China and India are now very rich countries based on where their elites are and where their middle classes are. But India probably has, I think, the largest number of poor people in the world. I mean, depends slightly how you measure it, but you could say 300 million people below the dollar a day poverty line that the World Bank uses. Now, that's equivalent roughly to the number of poor people that there are in Africa. So I think we need to be careful that, while some people in India are doing very well, there's a large chunk of people who aren't doing well, who are being left behind. And so if we're talking about comparisons and, aiding competitors and aiding rivals, we need to be really clear that India is not the same as the United Kingdom, it's not the same as the United States, and nor is China. There are still substantial numbers of poor people in China too. So eventually, we hope, we all want countries to develop, we all want them to have the same kind of living standards that we enjoy. And when we get to that stage, then we can say, okay, well, fair enough that we have tighter rules on intellectual property and tighter rules on patenting, but we're not at that stage.
Yes, but I do sense, even in Britain and other countries, this feeling that, China, there's always some spectre of another country which is gaining a competitive edge, and that they're gaining. Yes, there's a sort of sense of justice that people have at some level, but they also then feel, we're going to lose our jobs, we're going to lose our livelihoods, our living standards. Is that perhaps inevitable in this process, not just here, but if you want some sort of equality and justice in international agreements, that they are based more on equity rather than on a capitalist system of efficiency or whatever it is the capitalist system says it's about?
Well, I think what we're trying to construct here is a deal that benefits everyone, and ultimately doesn't matter if you're rich or poor. Eventually, if we don't tackle climate change, it will come for everyone. It'll come for the poorest countries first. We know small island states, much of Africa suffering from droughts and floods. We know those countries that have massive megadeltas, river systems, so Bangladesh, Vietnam. We know those countries are on the front line of global warming. But let's make no mistake here, if we get to a certain level of global warming, if we get to the 4-degree world, which we're probably heading to if we don't take action, then it's going to be countries like the UK and the United States that are hit too. So this is a the reason this is an international negotiation is because it does impact everyone in the end. So we need to construct a deal that benefits everyone, and I think we can. I think if we have a deal that keeps global warming below the dangerous threshold, which for small islands is actually 1.5 degrees rather than 2 degrees, if we make sure that we have a deal that enables technology to be transferred, then that benefits not just countries like China and India. It benefits renewables firms in the UK and Europe, where they've got suddenly new markets for their technology. So I think we can construct a deal that benefits everyone.
Okay, now what you've outlined is an incredibly complicated, complex issues. Each one of them is very complex. Where does ActionAid put its emphasis in terms of lobbying? You're trying to improve the terms of this agreement before it's sealed. So where do you put the emphasis yourself when you're in you can't do everything at once, so presumably you have priorities?
Yes, we do. I would say our priority is really around adaptation and financing adaptation. Now, it's not to say all the other issues that I've talked about are really important. But why we think adaptation is a priority is this. First of all, climate change is happening now. You know, the communities that we work with, and we work with 50 countries around the world, are already experiencing the impacts of global warming. So we need to have a response that's relevant for today. So in some countries it's about enabling smallholder farmers to experiment with new types of seed, improving their capturing of water, trying new techniques. In other countries it might be about building sea defences, all sorts of different things. But we need to have a response now because they're already being impacted. So as a development charity, as a development NGO, it really has to be first and foremost about adaptation. It's also worth pointing out that, not to downplay the importance of reducing emissions, of course, that's absolutely fundamental, but the impact of them is delayed for about 3 decades. So we've already got a certain amount of climate change in the system. Nothing we do today is going to be felt probably for another 30 years, which is why we need to take action on the things that matter most right now, and that's adaptation.
Okay, well, I've got a lot more I'd like to ask, but I think that's probably where we have to end, actually. We've run out of time. As they used to say on a very famous British TV show, the clock has beaten us. But thank you very, very much for coming in. At least that puts it in a very orderly and logical context. I'm not quite sure the negotiations are going to be quite that orderly and logical, but thanks for explaining it anyway. So thank you very, very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot for coming in.